Here we listen, seeing you on Zoom gives me COVID vibes
Oh my God.
because the only time we've ever been on a Zoom together, I think, is during COVID when we did virtual birthday toasts. But here,
Cheers and toast. Yeah, yeah. Well, we gotta like shake those bad COVID vibes off. But yeah, it is good to see you in your in a square.
yes,
Either way, I'll
yes,
take you either way, any way
right.
I can get you. Um, well, I'm delighted to be here with you on this very first episode of what I think is going to be a really fun project here around our podcast. It was your idea. So, tell me a little bit about where this idea came from and kind of what sparked your interest in this particular conversation.
So, what's so funny is because all my good ideas happen at the worst time. So, for work, I was coming home from a very late board meeting. My work day had already been about 12 hours. And I had this idea. I'm like, I would want to start a podcast. I'm going to see if Robin, and I texted you and you were like, I'm 1,000% in. But I think sort of the idea of the podcast in general sort of is more of like an evolution, right? So both you and I both write newsletters, you publish in ink and do other things. And so I sort of had this idea of like this cascading opportunity. And I've had people say to me over the years, you should start a podcast. Some of that I think comes from the students that I teach in the doctoral program, listening to me sort of pontificate about different things. But I think because you and I are both pretty curious people, we sort of like conversations that don't necessarily have a punctuation mark. And I thought, hey, listen, why not? Why not put this out in the world and see sort of if it hits? So that's sort of what I'm hoping we'll do together.
Well, I love that. I very distinctly remember getting that text. I am 1,000% in. I think this is going to be really fun. But you just said something that I feel like encapsulates what I imagine this being, which is a conversation without a punctuation mark.
Yeah.
And so, you had the idea for this title that we have. So tell me a little bit about the connection in your mind between the title and that conversation without a punctuation mark.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm not known for being with brevity. I'm not right. I'm not known for having any brevity, as you know, for being friends for over 40 years. So part of it is like sort of, I think about I've been told more than once, like get to the point, right?
Yeah.
But sort of I love this idea of like there actually is no get to the point, right?
Yeah.
That these conversations are really cyclical and you come back to them and you think about them and you're like, oh, well, what about that? And what about that? And so I think also you and I both are known like for changing our mind and like being flexible and nimble. And so I don't really have a fixed mindset. And so part of the outcome of that is I'm always explaining and over explaining things, telling lots of stories. And so to me, that sort of encapsulates a bit of like our conversational style, but also probably who both of us are.
Yeah, no, I love that. And it clicked immediately for me. And so, you know, because I think, this idea of being over explained, so often I'm in my head about something. Like something's happened, I'm ruminating, I'm thinking, I'm replaying the conversation, I'm planning out what I'm going to say next. And I can over analyze things like to the next level. Like I feel like I've been practicing this skill like my whole life. But it is true that our friendship is one of those places where you can kind of dump all that stuff out and not feel judged in any way for obsessing about one, specific detail or aspect of the conversation. And, I always feel like I can count on you to entertain it and like, okay, well, let's dig in and explore that, even if it doesn't really have a logical conclusion.
And I think even also if we don't agree on something, there was something I wanted so badly to pull up. And of course, because most of our photos of our childhood are not digital, I have to go into an album. But I was thinking back to when you and I did mock trial in high school and we were on
Uh-huh.
opposing teams. Remember this?
Yes, yes.
Yes. And so this idea of also like being comfortable to say, like, well, I'm not sure I agree with that. And so
Yeah.
I remember, sort of that first experience we had not being on the same side of something. Although the next year, I'm pretty sure as seniors, we were co-judges.
We were on the bench together.
Imagine.
Oh
Our
my
next
God.
episode, I'm pulling it out. I'm pulling out. I know I have, because you know me, I have this whole, it's probably cataloged by the year of when this took place. But I just love also that idea and why, I thought you and I were good partners to do this because, we're okay to say like, well, I'm not sure I think about it like that. Or I think, I might disagree. And to me, that's also part of over explaining. It's like sort of being forced to sort of think more deeply about your point.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I love that you can test drive an idea, like say a thought before it's like fully formed yet. I mean, I think how often I'm like, this thought is just coming to me. Some words are going to come out. I haven't really
Right.
organized it yet, and that's all totally fine. So you also said something that I feel like is one of the many wonderful roles that you play in our friendship. And I think just for our audience, we should also say there's two other people
Yes.
in
Well,
this.
God forbid we forget. The core four, there's four of us.
There's four total. They may be our two primary listeners, so we want to make sure we
Yeah,
acknowledge
that's
them.
right. Carrie and Benita, you're getting a shout out.
Yeah, so there are two other people that are critical to this relationship. But one of the many, many wonderful roles that you play in our friendship is the friendship historian. So you have a memory that is, I marvel at your memory. It's just really incredible. And you have been so good at keeping the documentation. You're the one that has, great albums and can recall a photo or a memory or a quote or something like that with such ease. And so tell me a little bit about like where do you think that comes from? Like why do you like I guess some of the documentation, kind of keeping
Oh
track
my
of
God. I mean, where did we start? Oldest daughter,
it.
perfectionist, generalized anxiety disorder. No, I'm just kidding. I think I've always I've always struggled to live in the moment. And
Mhm.
so, because of that struggle, I try to capture and memorialize the moments I'm in because sometimes I don't appreciate them when they're happening. And so, if
Mm.
I catalog them, then it's sort of like I can go back later and appreciate them even more deeply. I do this as a parent. I have
Mm.
a little memory box for every year of my kids' school. I write letters. I think part of why I'm sort of prolific in terms of documenting what's going on with my family, whether it be on my Facebook or something. At the end of the year, I print that into a book. Because I sort of have learned over time that I don't know that I always appreciate everything while it's happening. So, but if I capture it, I sort of appreciate it more later in some ways.
Mhm.
It's sort of like that's been my own analysis of it. I don't know. And I think also I probably get some of that from my family. We're big storytellers and big on tradition. And so some of it, I think, is sort of that's how it sort of comes out,
Yeah.
is cataloging it.
Yeah.
But thank God we did not have any digital cataloging
Oh
when you.
my gosh.
I'm not sure what careers we had.
I know. Oh my gosh. I feel like that comes up almost every time we're all together. It's just thank goodness none of the social media and digital
Yes.
pictures existed back when we were in high school because it would not have been good for anybody. But well, so with that preamble, the idea today for this very first episode was to really talk about friendship and what makes a friendship endure. And so you mentioned it earlier. We have been friends for 40-ish years now. And I distinctly remember the scene of the first time I saw you. And so for everybody else, what had happened was in our school district, all of the elementary schools kind of fed into a junior high school. And there was like 5 or 6 elementary schools. We kind of like went into this one school. So it's the first day of seventh grade. And I'm pretty sure we were in the same homeroom. I think it was like a homeroom because your last name at the time was an O and I was an S. And I think we're in the same homeroom. Anyway, I remember walking in and noticing your hair and
Mm.
and you were talking. And so like my attention went to you and I was just intrigued and I didn't really kind of form a thought, but I just remember at the time feeling so incredibly self-conscious because with all of these kids mixing together, the social hierarchy is like all thrown up into the air, and you have to kind of figure out like who your friends are going to be. So I think because you were so outgoing, so friendly, and just easy to talk to, somebody that was kind of like easy to connect with. I very distinctly remember that moment.
Yeah, I think it might have been in a history class.
Oh, maybe
Um,
so.
Mrs. Tizo. See,
Mm-hmm.
there I go with the historian again, Mrs. Tizo.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that. And yeah, and I think, gosh, middle school, God, it's just we've also had kids go through middle school, both of us. Middle school's tough. And I think I don't actually have any memories that don't include you from middle school on, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I think that's sort of one of the things I really wanted to think about, which is like there's always those things on Instagram. We always love to send them to each other. It's like, you know, there's no way anybody here has had the same group of friends since middle school. And I'm always like, me.
Yeah.
And it's like, I think it is really interesting and something worth considering, particularly in the intersection between personal life and work life, about like we evolve and we change. We're obviously, thank God, not the same people we were when we were 12. And we've lived these very like meandering different lives. It's not like every single thing we have, we don't have all the same interests, all the same pathways, all the same stories, but we've all been able to sort of grow together. And
Mhm.
so it's interesting to me to really think about why some relationships survive that growth and that evolution. And this could be friendship and marriage and work, and why some disappear, right? And
Mhm.
so ours has always been a constant. And I'm sort of really thinking about why. How do you explain to somebody why we've been friends for so long, why it still works, why it's you're still one of my best friends?
Mhm.
And sort of how those sort of reflections might like really inform how we approach work as well, and sort of thinking about the, iterations of our careers. I fall in love with every work family I've ever had. I know you feel the
Yeah.
same, sort of how that happens,
Mhm.
and sort of what we're thinking about it.
Yeah, I love that as a premise. And because I do think there are many parallels between what has made this friendship so strong and work over the last 40 years and some, maybe without intention, some kind of lessons or observations about that I have taken to work relationships or, you know, maybe even things kind of with my family or within my community. And so I know in preparation for this, you kind of put together, a framework. Now, I will say, because I'm also an oldest daughter here, I want to jump to the what I think is the right answer. Because I've picked one of your things and I'm like, that's the thing. But I
Okay.
want you to kind of talk through your four things, and then I'm going to tell you why one of them's
Which
better
one's the
than
right
all the
one?
other. Yeah.
Well, the four things I'm thinking about why they survive growth. So number one, I think they allow for reinvention, right? And so, we've all had our phases, right? I feel like you're the queen of reinvention among the four of us, because you're always pursuing like just the biggest version of whatever it is. Like you don't just like, somebody's like, I'm going to start working out. And then you're like, I'm going to do an Iron Man, like which you did, it's like, oh, I want to like learn how to cook a dish. And then you're like, I'm going to learn how to cook all the different types of French cuisine. Like, so I think like this idea of like reinvention, one of the things is creating space for people to reinvent themselves and to not be threatened by that or intimidated. So I think some of that comes with age and maturity, but like, a lot of times people say they want you to grow, they want you to evolve. But real sort of relationships that'll stand the test of time really allow for that. So number one, I think they allow for reinvention. The second
Mhm.
thing is sort of a buildup from that, which is they're rooted in curiosity, not comparison. And so when I think about that, we have all pursued different things in our work life. And I think overwhelmingly we cheer for each other. But we also have a very, we have some of us have kids, some of us don't, some of us have dogs, some of us don't, some of us are working full time, some of us are not. Everybody sort of has this different version of their life. And I think we're all equally curious about what the other is doing. And
Mhm.
so I think, you know, sometimes we seek out an echo chamber, I think, in our relationships, like people who think like we do, want to do what we do, are sort of at our level. And I think one of the things that has helped our relationship survive growth across the board is that we're like sort of, we're very curious about what each person is sort of exploring. The third thing is this idea of tolerating asymmetry. And so when I think about that, this is the idea of like, Simon Sinek talks about sitting in the mud with people. And so each of us have had ebbs and flows. And this is actually one of the things, I wonder if this is the one you picked, but I don't know. Don't tell me yet. But one of the things I've thought about is there have been points in our lives where some of us have been struggling, and others have been thriving. And that could be financial, that could be relationship, it could be self concept. And so I think one of the things that makes our relationship growth is like we are able to absorb that. So we know how to show up when people are struggling. And we also create comfort for other people to say. So, like, if you're sitting around a dinner table and we're all out to dinner one night, and everyone's like in a great mood, and you're like going through something really hard, to feel like you don't have to show up like and pretend it's okay, right?
Mhm.
Say, hey, I see the three of you are all good. I'm not. Like, this
Mhm.
is what's going on. And the last thing is I think like a non-negotiable, but you have to have shared values, right? So, this is like the art of when we plan our girls' trips. And it's
Mm.
like, you're like the Airbnb, you're like an Airbnb person, and I'm like, where's the concierge at the five-star
Right, right,
hotel?
right. Yeah.
Right. But the idea is like the value is like we all want to go away. We all want to enjoy
Sleep
ourselves. And
near
so
each other. Right.
right, and be together,
Right.
do fun things. And so like the idea of like even when we might have different interests or things, like we have this common thing that we all want that keeps us together, which is to keep the relationship thriving and growing. And so like those are the sort of the four things that I've been thinking about. But I'd love to hear what you're thinking.
Yeah, yeah.
What's the right answer?
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, like, and I think those are all um like attributes of or things that when they're in place, they do make possible a relationship to really stand the test of time. And I think maybe the better way to put it is I think there's a thread through these four that's more of a tactical thing, and that is about maintenance. And so, one thing I think that has made this work for so long actually comes back to something that you started, which is our monthly girls' night. And so you once again had this idea, and the very first scheduled girls' night was September 11th, 2001. And
Wow. Where was
yeah,
it? Was this
it,
when we went to each other's houses?
yeah, and you and Benita were roommates
Oh my
over
God.
at the condo in Bethesda, and I was in Arlington. And so that morning, so it was the very first one. We were going to meet at your house for
Did you say
dinner.
September 11th, 2001?
Yes, I'm not joking. I don't, okay, wait. So I don't know how you don't remember this, but I'll tell you what happened.
Okay.
So, because it was your idea, we had like the whole thing, and we're in the host person was going to cook and da, 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 it was all set. So that day, the tragedy of 9/11 happened in the morning. And which, by the way, you were the one who we were still back on like
I was on
AOL.
AOL.
Yeah, we were on AOL Instant Messenger. I'm at the office. We're on AOL. You tell me, oh my God, a plane just hit the World Trade Center. So that's when, the whole thing
Yeah.
started to, come to light what was happening. Anyway, so the day progresses, and I went home to Arlington, and like it just felt like the
Oh, it,
world was like it was at this time where we didn't know what was going on. I was so near the Pentagon, I could still smell it's still burning. I could still smell the smoke. And anyway, so I texted you all and I said, I can't make it. Like I just with
mm,
road closures and just this level of confusion, I can't make it. But because you guys were all in the same building, you guys still met for dinner that night. And so then immediately after that, we picked up with the regular cadence and have kept that going now for 25 years, almost 25
mhm,
years.
mhm.
And, even with Carrie moving away and whatever, it's just been this regular drumbeat. And so this, and I will also say that like, not only what did you initiate it, but you're often the one that's saying, hey, we need to get a date on the calendar. And we do, maybe with like some delay in my responding to the text, but like eventually it'll happen. So when I read the one about tolerating asymmetry, the way you described it, I totally agree. I think that makes a lot of sense. But it also is this, hey, I'm going to put some maintenance in here because once it all comes together and it happens, we all enjoy it, get value out of it, love it, and it is the thing keeping us connected. And without having any resentment. I don't get a sense that you resent
Mhm.
being the initiator so often. Um, and so that to me, I think is the one that really stuck out for me, which is having really no expectations of who this friend is, them staying stagnant in the person you initially met, them performing some function for you, them making you feel some way. There's no expectations of that. There is this vast space for just to be who you are and gather with some regularity so that you can reconnect and just remember like what you enjoy about each other or so that's to me the
What's
common
interesting,
thread.
but you know what's interesting about that? I don't have any resentment around that, and I think also because we're all like sort of equally committed to it, and people, but I don't know that I would feel the same in other relationships.
Right,
And
that's
like
true.
if I am constantly and like I always joke like at my age at this point, like in my 50s, like I only like about 7 people
Right,
anyway.
right, right,
So like for me, I'm like, I don't actually want to get together with anyone. That I'm joking, but it's like,
right.
I'm still, I'm busy. I like my downtime. I mean, I think people have an impression of me like constantly being on the move, but like I can couch surf with the best of them. So like I just think like other relationships, if I was constantly initiating, I'd be like, you know what? So I feel like also there's this idea of like you make a decision about the relationships that you want to cultivate and that
Hmm.
you want to be accommodating in and that you want to that are like non-negotiables. And the others, I don't know that I'd be the same, which is something I haven't really thought about before, which is I think some relationships in life and in work survive growth because both people are sort of committed to that. But I think there are others where we're like, oh, that's just that season. That season's come to a close. And I don't think of it that way in our relationship, but I do think I might do that with others.
Yeah, yeah. And so I think to kind of extrapolate out for anyone listening about like what you might take away from this, and I here I'm going to try to like put a punctuation mark on it, and I shouldn't, but you know, I think being able to kind of sort the two into buckets and kind of really know for yourself, is this something that I want to stay committed to and sustain? And if yes, recognizing it's going to take some maintenance and just putting the work in is what's going to keep it going. Or is it okay for it to be more of a seasonal friendship, like something that is, there for because of proximity or for whatever reason, and it's okay when it's comes to closure. Because I think when we either have expectations that everything's going to be this enduring, long-lasting relationship and it doesn't, that can be disappointing, or that we are ready to close something out and somebody feels left behind, that can also be very disappointing, for the person that maybe feels like they're being um, left out or unfriended. So anyway, I mean, I think the the other this is obviously because we're all women and this is kind of more of like a personal relationship. The commonality that I think with the work stuff is that, kind of going back to your four things, like when I think about the professional relationships that have lasted for a long time, they really check many of the same boxes. And that's why I feel like that's, it's a good framework. But it is maybe a question I would ask you is like, do you feel like this is something that you can manufacture, or does it have to be kind of organic? It just happens to be like the um, characteristics of that relationship.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because work relationships are built around primarily proximity, right? I mean, I think, and I think they're so intimate and close, particularly in the work that I do and that you do, they're in the, you have this really sort of artificial experience in some ways. And I think sometimes in a work setting, we try to make that become more than it needed to be, right? It's like, oh, well, I'm not going to work here anymore, but we're going to still get together for dinner. And it's like, maybe we'll just stay friends, but we don't have to get together for dinner. And I think sort of the opposite is true in personal relationships, which is like, you don't work with your friends primarily, right? So you have to sort of make deliberate effort. So to me, like what's interesting is like, it's about the deliberate effort. And I think sometimes we confuse the proximity and the closeness that we might develop with work relationships as being the same as the kind of relationships we have. And there are examples of that. I have friends that I've made through my work that are now my personal friends. And so I think, when I think about why that happens, why some people are left behind or those relationships reach the end of their season and others don't, it's really about sort of a shared investment. Both people have to want to continue to cultivate that relationship and see it thrive. I fall in love with every work team I've been on. And so I think about this a lot because I have stayed friendly with everyone that I've worked with or people that I've supervised, but it's not the same as the personal relationships unless they sort of, I guess I'm trying to figure out what's that crossover.
Mhm.
What is the crossover between like we've worked together closely for 5 years, now we don't work together and we still get together for dinner and we're actually really deep friends.
Mhm.
I don't know. I mean, I think I'm still trying to figure out like why does that like is that just how it is? Like we have a continuum of relationships and they all sort of fall onto them. I mean, maybe that's what it is. it isn't that one relationship is better than another. It's just they're all different types of relationships. But I think sometimes we try to think like this is a good relationship with another person and it needs to fit in this box. And I think, well, maybe there's like all different kinds of ways that you can relate to people.
Hmm.
Um, and that works
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that notion of a spectrum, it just works with so many things that we talk about because almost nothing in our lives is black and white. And when we kind of allow for all these different shades in the middle, it just, I think, kind of creates some greater acceptance. But, I think about my friend Catherine. So she's somebody that I met through work and definitely, became a personal friend. I was so fortunate to be in her wedding, and now we, try to get together pretty regularly for coffee, but she's somebody I would consider a lifelong friend at this point. And, maybe what makes her different is because so often I think the closeness that we can have with people at work is relative to the work we're doing itself. And so when the work is kind of taken out of the equation and you're just interacting with people, with someone as, the regular person, the relevance might not be there. Now with Catherine, she's similar age, a mom, middle-aged mom. We have
Yeah.
very similar values, all those kinds of things that it make, plus some people are just fun and you just want to be with them. But anyway, so I guess to kind of
But you made me think of this one thing that you made me think of something really important. And this could be a whole nother episode,
okay.
which is relationships that are connected with work. And what I was thinking about is I was thinking about my boss, right? Who, would say to me, she doesn't say this to me, but would say to me, I like you, but that's not why you're here, right? This idea of having relationships with people and how that leads to work experience, like work opportunities too, is something I would love to unpack because I think sometimes people think, oh, it's just who you know. And I'm always like, no, it's who you know and who knows your work. And so I
Mm-hmm.
think also this piece of like when you work with people, they get to see you deeply, right? Because like I show up as exactly as I am at work. It's just sort of like on steroids, certain aspects of my personality
Right.
are on steroids, right? Like, it's like sometimes when my team will like make fun of me or something, oh, I'm like, oh, my girlfriends would look, you don't know any, like,
Right.
they're
This
like,
this would all be very familiar. Yeah.
right, right. Like, oh yeah, And then at the same time, I don't think any of us really know how each other shows up at work, right? So it's
Hmm.
like I had somebody that I know personally. I was at a retirement celebration with them. They only know me through our kids doing a shared activity. And it was the retirement was of a principal that I used to mentor and coach. And when I got there, she said, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know you were going to be there. Will you speak?" And I gave an impromptu, sort of tribute. And when I was done, she gave a tribute to me. And later I saw the woman at another, social thing. She doesn't know me at all as my professional self. And she said, like, it was so weird for me. She's like, because you're exactly the same person, but you were like this other, like sharper, like I was like almost intimidated. Like I was like, you're somebody, like you do something.
Right, right, right.
She's like, I don't know. I know you as like a mom.
Right,
And so
right.
it's also that piece of like which part of ourselves we bring to the relationship
Hmm.
and that sort of has a pretty significant influence. I don't
Yeah,
know. I mean,
yeah.
do you feel like you're the same you in every setting?
Oh, 1,000%, 1,000%. Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm often told at work, like you're a lot because
I don't
my,
feel like you're a lot.
I think maybe it's because like relative to my environment, maybe in your environment, the way I show up would be more normal, but in mine, uh, maybe it's just like,
Are you
um,
too energetic?
yeah.
Isn't that interesting? Now, are you mostly working with, and not to generalize, but are you mostly working with men?
I think it's a fair mix,
Okay,
but
interesting.
yeah. So no, but I mean, I definitely feel like it is my regular self, and so every once in a while I think like, oh, I need to act professional, or I need to like act like some way because, and then I'm like, oh no. So I try that persona on for like a minute, and I'm like, oh no, no, I have to go back to how I
Yeah,
am.
that's like me when I say I'm going to listen more and talk less. I say this like regularly. I
Yeah,
mean, it's got to be a joke to my, God knows what my team says, the people who
yeah.
report to me. But I'll always say like, what is it? There's this person who writes a leadership. I forgot who it is, but they always say like, the leader should be the last one to share their opinion so that everyone else, and I'm like, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to lay everybody else. I'm going to let everybody else talk before I give my opinion. And 100% of the time, someone asks a question, I'm like, and here's what I think. And I'm like, yeah, it's like, exactly. I mean, so we all
Yeah.
have those things. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, at the
And
same, but I will
yeah.
say this. I will say this. I think authenticity is a universal unify. It unifies people at work.
Yeah.
And I think you gave that story about the first time you met me, and I was so outgoing and I was very warm, and I'd like to think that I still am that same way. To me, like I would much rather someone show up at work or in life and be raw and flawed and too much than me be like, so what's that about? Like, who are they about? Like, I prefer
Yeah.
that. That's just me.
Yeah, yeah. No, I totally agree. And I feel like, there's just days where like my authentic self is like not fit for human consumption. Like nobody needs to be exposed to that. But so I think in a work setting that there's an acceptable range, and my job is to show like bring some energy and enthusiasm and
Right.
belief to the groups that I work with so that they can then take that on themselves. And so that's kind of like how some of it I need to it's not that I like shift into that mode. It's just like which part of you you're highlighting in that environment. So
Oh, I mean, I sort of subscribe to this idea that you should never make yourself smaller to fit the room you're in. But at the same time, you have to recognize how much the room is ready for you, right? And so that to me, like for any work transition I've ever made in my life, that is always my hardest part of any transition, which is deciding when to show up as all of me. And I
right.
remember that when I left my last organization and came to the one I'm with now, that was where I was most uncomfortable because I left a place that after more than 20 years, everybody knew who I was. I had a strong reputation. They knew what I was about, what I believed. I sort of was known for being a bit irreverent, but in a professional way. Like I would say what needed to be said. And so then I went in this new space and I was very much an outsider. And I think that's another thing, which is when you think about how relationships form and those first impressions and then how much we want to show up and sort of how we slowly reveal ourselves to other people. I think sometimes it's better to make decisions about people once you've seen a couple of the layers get peeled off than what you
Yeah.
get at the beginning.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. And sometimes we judge too early. Yeah, I had a recent situation like that where I really needed to like rethink some opinions I'd formed about somebody once I got to know her better. But all right,
Yeah.
so like just to bring some closure to this, so what the initial focus was on longevity in these relationships. Tell me, I think kind of where I want to land with this is like why? Like, what do you feel like you've gained from having a long-standing relationship versus those that were hot for a season and then they faded?
Well, to me, I'm a very relationship driven person. And so I think longevity in relationships is really important. Shared history is important. Shared values are important. And I think that they create an experience that allows, it's like a strong foundation from which sort of everything else can be built. And I think about in my own experience, like when you think about having multiple identities in life and in work, right? You're a leader, you're a mother, you're a wife, you're a daughter, you're a sister, you're a friend. When we're all these things, I've always felt like at any one time, one of my identities is under attack.
Mm,
And, I'm killing it at work and I'm halfway showing up as a friend, or I'm, doing really well as a wife, but maybe not as great as a daughter, or whatever it might be. And it's sort of shades of gray. But this idea of like, to me, that each of those identities is grounded in relationships. And so to have strong relationships across all of your identities, I think is just a really important like psychological foundation.
hmm
And something I think about a lot, even with my children, which is like looking at the kinds of relationships they have and those strong foundations. Because to me, they're anchors. And if you have a good anchor, you can sort of the sky's the limit in terms of what you can
hmm
accomplish.
Yeah, yeah. A couple words there that you said that really resonated with me, the kind of this notion of foundation or having an anchor. I feel like the relationship that we have, the foursome, it has really been so grounding for me throughout my life. Now I have longstanding, obviously, with my family. My sisters are still very much, my best friends, and like we've been in our home in the community for a
Yeah.
long time. Like all of these things, like but this group of four has been one of those constants that you can, because there are just times in our life for all the normal reasons where there's just uncertainty or doubt or just worry or regret. There's all of these things that are very part of like, just being human on this planet right now, that having a group of people that who know you, who love you, who are going to be there no matter what is just I think kind of helps you feel kind of grounded, and it's just been so valuable from that sense. Plus it's just fun. Like I think just the like these days I really have to like calendar time to have fun. And I mean, and I love my life and I love my work and I love my kids and all those kinds of things, but like the things that we do are fun. Like I just, just to get together and just like we're always laughing, often trying something new. And so I really look forward to it from that perspective too. So I guess maybe I just want to say thank you so much for this idea. Thank you to anyone out there who's listening to us. I would expect kind of more similar conversations in the future. So really come along with us and allow us, listen to us kind of really over explain a particular topic. We're going to be kind of bouncing all over the place, but this has been great.
Yeah. And I think that at the end of the day, there's very few things in life that are simple. And so that's sort of why we always over explain. I'm glad
Yeah,
to be here. I'm excited to do
that's
this with
right.
you.
All right, fantastic. Well, that's all for today. So
Yep.
thank you so much. See you next time.
Yep.
All right.